from the Key Radio Studios in Provo, Utah, and broadcasting live throughout Utah County, Sevier County, South Central Utah, Carbon County, and the Uinta Basin. It's your good friends Mike and Heather in the morning.
Oh yeah, we mean it this time. It is Mike and Heather in the morning after a week or so of, going out to the Midwest.
That's right. I'm sorry we're back. Grant did a great job of playing music.
Yeah.
Some good
it's
stuff
nice
there.
that we can leave and we don't have to worry about, things falling apart and
worry
but
about
when
things
we come
falling
back,
apart when we come back.
That's right. We found out that we were the scallywags who made all the trouble. So
We are.
that's okay.
Yeah.
We'll do the
Yeah, we came back and we stirred up the whole station. We took everything apart, moved things, and the day we got back,
What's wrong with us? It's like, okay, it's time to do some cleaning. But
we had to make room for things.
Yeah. We got an envelope printer, which is gifted to Key Radio, and that's a very important thing because we have a newsletter that's going to be coming out, and we need.
We've been saying
envelope
that for a long time now.
but we mean it this time.
It was supposed to be a June thing.
Yeah.
Now it's a July thing.
Oh, it is July. Whoops. In the studio, of course, you've got Mike and Heather. You've got Grant at the controls, and he's pushing buttons and sliding the faders up and down. And thanks a lot for all you do, Grant. We appreciate you.
That's what I do.
That's right. and we have our good friend and yours, Pastor Timothy O'Day of Christ Fellowship Church in Lehi, Utah. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on today.
We are so happy that you're here. Thank you for coming in.
Well, my pleasure.
He's so nice. My pleasure. El gusto es mío. That's what I like to say.
Ooh.
Yeah, I learned that. I'm trying to learn Spanish. It's not going
Good
very
for
well.
you.
Well, it's not going well. We got that little Duolingo owl, and it just is so passive aggressive. It's just like every day is like, if you had just 15 minutes. I'm like, be quiet, owl. I'm still trying to do work. Poor little owl. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, what do we have going on here? We have lots of stories, but what do you have going on, Mike?
Yeah, I'm looking at an article from Fox News. Ed Sheeran, Paul McCartney, and the Rolling Stones, and about 1,500 other musicians have signed a letter to the UK Secretary of State for Digital Culture and Media regarding supporting the live music industry during this coronavirus pandemic.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I was like, whoa, I'm waiting for it. Okay.
Well, here's Paul McCartney. What's he worth? It's in the billions. It's not even millions.
I have no idea.
And he's requesting that somebody, come on.
But he's always been a champion. He's been a champion.
Maybe he's just lending his name
and
his influence for the little guy.
Paul, dig in your pocket. You can make a difference all by yourself without going to the man.
Oh, no, I think that...
I think he would say that we all need help from our friends.
Yeah, just a little.
Oh, wow, that was brilliant. Oh, man. No, I think that you need a champion. I think there's more that you got to make I think you just need to make a statement. I think it's important. Let people know, hey, you know what? We need
be quiet. Dig in your wallet.
Stop. Get off my lawn.
Charity starts at home, Paul.
You guys are so salty today. Okay, I want to share something because it's really funny to me. There's this man from Oklahoma. He catches a paddlefish. It's 147 pounds. It's believed to be the world record. It's a huge fish, but I've never seen a paddlefish. But yes, I know. It looks like a fish that a little 3-year-old would draw. That's what this fish looks like. It is the goofiest looking fish I have ever seen. It's got this big, sword snout. It's got a big fat belly. It's kind of got like a shark tail. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
Kind of an overweight swordfish.
Yeah.
How is he holding that thing? Because if it jerks, I think he would drop it.
It's just huge. But it looks like something a little kid would draw.
That's pretty cool.
I think God is funny. He makes funny animals.
Today is Made in the USA Day.
You know what it is also?
Freedom.
It's also I Forget Day.
Is it really?
Yeah. And what's funny about
I forgot.
that is because yesterday I celebrated that because we had worship music practice and I had completely forgotten. And all of a sudden I get the text, so Heather, are you going to show up? And I'm like, whoops. So I celebrated that yesterday. So.
And freedom from fear of speaking, like speaking in public, being on a microphone, over the air.
Congratulations, you two. You're no longer afraid.
No.
Well, we can say all kinds of stupid things without even thinking.
Yeah.
Without fear.
It is a terrifying thing, especially for a lot of people. And I'll say, when you have a platform, it's a big responsibility. You have an opportunity to speak life or death to people. And which are you going to choose? And you don't want to feel like you're being a fool. So I can see, it is. Public speaking is very, very difficult. You do it for a living. Well, you do it for fun. I don't know.
Sure. Whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
Right? You do it, and then if they give you money, then you're happy, I guess.
I don't know. But it is something where you become very vulnerable. And nowadays it's even worse because everything is digital. Like people will video you even if you don't know that they're videoing you, and then all of a sudden it's there forever. So
that's why you need to just mean what you say and say what you mean, right?
Mm-hmm, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep. So let that be a challenge for all of us today.
On World UFO Day.
And World UFO Day. There's so much. Okay. So, friend.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, no, that's just the beginnings. We have a lot to talk about. And we have Pastor Timothy here. We don't want to waste any more time because he is, I don't know. I really enjoy when you come here. We learn so much.
Oh,
and
that's
great. That's great, Heather.
I'm glad to hear it. Really. It's sincere.
That's good. Oh, Mike, what do you got?
Well, I have trivia.
Oh, okay.
And we're going to go to a break so I can go turn the fan on because it's getting kind of warm in here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's a question from the category of a time to weep. Who did Jesus tell not to weep for him?
Okay. Who did Jesus?
Yeah, who did Jesus tell not to weep for him?
Okay. Now, here's the deal. If you know the answer to this question, even if you don't and you just want to take a wild guess, we are all about wild guesses. You can give us a text, 855-539-4583. That's 855-KEY-GLUE. You can also put a comment on the comment section on the Facebook live feed, which is wonderful, and let us know that you're listening. Now, you are listening to Key Radio. Mike and Heather in the morning. Pastor Timothy O'Day. Get yourself a cup of coffee because we've got a lot to talk about.
Key Radio, Life Unlocked, Truth Unleashed. Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom.
Trivia question. Our question was, who did Jesus tell not to weep for him?
Okay.
Do we have any answers?
I have not seen any on the text line, but that's okay. And nobody's really answered it on our comment section on Facebook. So you can either wait or we can just give the answer.
Okay.
What do you want?
Give the answer before we forget.
That sounds good. I say the women. It's pretty general.
That's pretty close. Yeah,
The women.
That's pretty close.
The women.
Yeah.
Don't cry.
And here's the answer from Luke 23:28. The daughters of Jerusalem.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could read some of that.
Yeah, that'd be good.
But turning to them, Jesus said, Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children.
Wow. Okay. Good morning, Mike. It's good that you are listening as well. Thank you. And Steve Pearson says, hello from California. I miss your Utah faces.
We're not sure what he means by
What
that.
is a Utah face? Like, is it kind of more square with a little lump on the top, like to look like Utah shape of it, or?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Just
it.
joking.
That's it.
We're
Yeah.
just giving you a hard time, Steve. Okay, we got work to do here today because we are approaching Independence Day, July 4th, right? 2 more days. And I have this little prayer chain group message thing that some girlfriends of mine started. And we have a daily prayer, and then they have a question. And the question, this was back, I think, Sunday. The question was just really telling. It was just simply this: will you surrender all your rights? What? And I thought about that. I'm like, that is, and it wasn't just your rights, it's all your rights. And you know, Christians have a tendency to sing this beautiful song called I Surrender All. Remember that song?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All to Jesus, I surrender all. Okay. And I think about this. I don't think I surrender anything. I mean, I might surrender some things once in a while, but what does that mean? I mean, especially since we are so into our individual rights and we're fighting for our rights, and there's a lot of turmoil in our world. what does this mean to surrender all your rights? And as Christians, we have great freedom and rights in that respect. And here, we're called to surrender our rights. Or are we? Pastor Timothy O'Day.
Here, referencing the song, or just in the Christian life?
In the Christian life.
Yeah. Well, I think to answer that question, we have to know our own identity and what our rights are.
Okay.
So beginning there, because this question that we're asking, we have to see that you have a particular intersection in mind. So do you see that?
No.
Okay. you're talking like an American. You know why?
Yeah.
Because I am.
You
one.
are an American,
Okay.
right? Yeah, you are. Right. But if you were to go to another part of the world, they're going to talk about their rights much differently. So you have grown up in a nation where you have been told, it has been drilled into you, you have certain unalienable rights. They belong to you. Nobody can take them from you. And if somebody does, you should fight every inch for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we think.
Right.
That's why you see people in screaming matches at each other or typing matches at each other. That's probably what you see more often today. And so let's think of it as that intersection.
Okay.
That we are Americans, but we're also Christians. And so one important question we have to ask is, what's my real identity? What's my real identity, right?
Right.
Do you see where I'm going with
I
this?
see where you're going.
And I
with
battle
this.
with this all the time.
Yeah.
Like, do I respond as an American, a patriotic American who loves his country, or am I responding as a Christian? And
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, that's part of what we're talking about. I think one of the incredible things about this reality when we think about who we are and what our identity is, we look at 1 Peter, which I know we're going to look at Philippians too, but just if we look at 1 Peter here, there's a certain truth about our identity that comes out, where as he's writing to these churches, so if you look at the beginning, right, he's writing to, he calls verse 1 of chapter 1, to those who are elect exiles of the dispersion in Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. So, okay, all these places.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes on to say in chapter 2, verse 11, Beloved, I urge you as sojourners and exiles to abstain from the passions of the flesh, which wage war against your soul. Here's what I want to draw from this.
Mm-hmm.
He is talking to Greeks who live in Greek cities, who have lived there for their whole life. And he's saying, you're a sojourner. You're an alien. So it'd be like, when you just got back from Wisconsin,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your old stomping
We pronounce
grounds.
that Wisconsin.
Wisconsin,
Thank you.
sorry. Okay. Sorry. Wisconsin. Let's go back from Wisconsin.
That's
Right, you're
funny when you say it.
It's funny when I say it. You should hear yourself say it. You just got back from that place, your old stomping grounds, right? But because you're Christians, you can also say, boy, I'm an alien here.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an extent to where it's appropriate for us as Christians to say we are aliens in our homeland. So as Americans, we're also aliens here because we now, through Jesus Christ, belong to a different kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
So this is key to get our identity, because we're going to be looking back to our true family, our true identity, to know what our rights are and also what we should be doing with them. So, for example, sometimes my kids will ask me why we do something. They'll say, well, this family, they do this. Why do we do it this way? And in short, you know what my answer is?
Because I said so?
Well, it's kind
Okay.
of. Yeah, it's
That's
like,
my parenting.
Because we're the O'Days. That's what we do.
Ah, okay.
That's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
They do that. We do this. So in short, what I'm kind of saying to them is, well, that's their identity.
Mm-hmm.
They can do that. But where you belong, the people that you belong to, where your identity is founded, this is what we do. This is our identity. And so as Christians, we need to be looking to Jesus to figure out what is our identity. Because really, in the United States, we're just sojourners. We're actually aliens here. We belong to another kingdom. We happen to live in this kingdom too, or nation. I know here in the U.S. you don't call it a kingdom. That's what we fought against. So, but we belong here, but we don't fully belong here. And that question of identity is key to see at first if we're going to answer this question of what are my rights and should I lay them down and how do I lay them down?
Okay. So this is an intersection. We are Americans, but if you are a believer in Christ, then you are of Christ. You are for the kingdom of God. That is your identity. Now that's a hard thing because in many respects they just kind of go meet head on. There's a lot of contention there between the two.
They can.
Yeah, and especially nowadays too. And just going, I'm thinking about in terms of looking at what's going on in our nation today, and sometimes I look at this and go, I don't even know how to function in this, how I'm supposed to approach this, because in one respect, I'm like, oh, this isn't right, and because I'm an American. But then I think, wait a minute, but I'm supposed to be gracious, I'm supposed to be merciful, and all of those other things. And how does that play into it? It almost feels like my flesh is battling against my spiritual self, and that's a terrible place to be in. I guess when my question is, as believers, what rights do I have?
What rights do you have?
Right.
I mean, you carry all the rights that you carry as an American citizen.
Mm-hmm.
All the rights that you're afforded by the Constitution, those are given to you. So that's not different for us. It's what are we going to hold to as our most precious identity? Mm-hmm. So, I don't want this to happen, but let's say the Constitution were to dissolve. Let's say that our government were to collapse. And once again, I don't want that to happen, but if it were to happen, am I going to say all is lost? What am I going to be looking to as my ultimate identity, my ultimate hope? So I don't think it's lost on any of us that the current political climate seems to be more divisive and more important than it ever has before. And that's not to say it's not been divisive in the past. People beat each other up in the past. People got into arguments in the past. But I do think what people are noticing now is in the age of social media and the connectedness of the internet, but the vitriol is getting more extreme. Mm-hmm. The ideologies are getting more personal, that your identity is getting tied to your political opinions. Because what we've seen in this vacuum of secularism that's growing in the United States, where there's this rejection of knowing God and instead trying to make your own way, we are very religious people. Whether you want to be a religious person or not, you're a very religious person. Something is going to fill that void. And when you reject God and the ways of God, and you then are looking to other things to fill that void, politics and the political system, power in that sense, easily comes in. So then suddenly your religiosity, your purity, your justification comes to holding right opinions. It comes to the person that you're supporting, or your damnation depends on your political opinions and the person that you're supporting. So then you end up in this very deep war. And so where I'm most troubled, I'm not surprised by seeing this in the world, because you see this throughout history too. If you look at ancient history, you realize, oh, this has already happened before. There's nothing new under the sun in that sense. But where this is most troubling is when you see this with Christians. Because when you see this happening within churches, where there's such a divide over politics, what we need to remember is that you're looking for your identity in the wrong place. You're placing your hope in the wrong spot. When you say, first and foremost, I'm an American, then you end up saying, and the problem that America has right now is this other ideology. So the solution is my ideology. My ultimate hope then is nothing to do with the Christian life or with Jesus Christ, but it turns into this person getting elected, these policies going into place. Now, I'll give a little caveat here and just off tangent real quick. It's not that those things aren't important. Don't hear me saying that at all. Mm-hmm. You should vote. You should be vocal. That's something that's been afforded to you as a citizen. I voted in this last primary that we had, and so these things, we should be speaking into these things. But what position do they hold? And is it getting to the point where you are looking at other people in your church who are saying Jesus is Lord, and then you're saying, yeah, but you also have to be supporting this guy as president, or I can't have fellowship with you.
Mm.
Do you see how that divide comes in? Right? We need to have more of an Ephesians chapter 4 attitude, where after Paul is speaking to us about everything that Christ has done to make us unified, he says, strive to maintain the unity that is being given to you in Jesus Christ. How do you do that? You have to be humble. You have to be gentle with each other when you disagree. and you have to bear with one another, because you might come to an impasse where you say, we just disagree.
Oh, boy. Okay. You just said three things that I'm not seeing any evidence of that on social media or in the news articles at all. Humility, really? Like, nobody is humble anymore.
Well,
And some people will hear that, though, and say, well, you're just being a doormat, or that you don't really care about the issues. But you're not saying that at all. It's not about the issues. It's about people. It's about the Lord. This stuff is actually, I don't know, what do you think? I think it's a distraction to what we are supposed to be focusing on, and our focus should be on matters of the kingdom of God.
Yeah, I mean, it does go back to hope, and it does go back to identity. So if the accusation that you're going to lay at my door, anybody's door that says stuff like this, then I'd say, look, then you're going to have to look to what you would call what that person would call the greatest doormat in history, Jesus Christ. Now, I don't view him that way. But if you're going to say that's what I'm doing, then I'm going to point you to that passage that you pointed out to me, Heather, Philippians chapter 2. And let's have we read that yet?
No, I don't think so.
Why don't you go read it, and we can say, why would that person, I'd say to that person, you're calling Jesus Christ the greatest doormat in human history. Right?
Okay, all right. Ephesians chapter 2.
He's not, by the way. He's not the greatest doormat. Yeah, go ahead.
So if there is any encouragement in Christ, any comfort from love, any participation in the Spirit, any affection and sympathy, complete my joy by being of the same mind, having the same love, being in full accord and of one mind. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. And then verse 4 says, let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. Do you want me to keep going?
I want you to keep going.
Ooh, okay, yay.
Right. Okay, so you're stopping there. That's what you're being told to do. And you could look at that and say, oh, sounds like you're being a doormat. Now, Paul gives a reason, though, why we should do that. Verse 5.
Okay. Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men, and being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross.
Yeah. Now, that's what I wanted you to read.
Okay.
Okay, so let's put that together. So Paul is giving this exhortation that we read in those first 4 verses right there. In the sum of it being, count others as more significant than yourself. So you're not demanding your rights. You're not demanding your way. We could jump over to 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and realize, because that's not love. It's not love to demand your own way and to insist that you're getting the things that you want. Love looks a lot different. It has to be patient and kind, bearing with, forgiving, all these things. And so Paul is laying this out. This is how you're supposed to live. He's saying this is your identity. But we will not get anywhere if we simply tell each other, you need to be considerate of me, because that is not who you are apart from Jesus Christ. You're not. That's just not who you are. And if you're looking to other things for your identity, you're never going to be that way. And it's not going to make any sense. If I'm thinking first and foremost that my identity is in the kingdom of this world, and I've got to make this world my permanent home and perfect, and I have to use the means then of this world to do that, all those first 4 verses, counting others as more significant than yourself, that's not going to get you anywhere. Now, some people will say, you need to do those things because then you trick them into giving, they give you favor that way. No, that's not what we're saying. We're really saying, lay down your life.
Harsh.
Lay down your life. Give it up. Why and how can you do that? It is only when you take on the identity of Jesus Christ by faith, where you can say, I died, and the life I now live, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. Now, that's not Paul just saying there like, oh, I just think that I want to be like Jesus. There is a real change that takes place in us by faith, where God actually does something to you. Where when we say, the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God. That's when I say it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. This is not figures of speech that we're using. I'm really saying the old me died, and now God lives through me. The old nature has passed away. It's dead. The person I was is gone. And I'm not replaced now by a new, better me. My identity, my nature is replaced with the nature of Jesus Christ. So then, if that's the case, that's what Paul's arguing. If that's the case, that's why verse 5 makes sense. He says, have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus. Mm-hmm. You don't have that just by good teaching. You don't have that just by me wanting it. You actually get it when you are connected by faith to Jesus Christ. Your identity is tied up in his identity. Because this is why, as Christians, when we're talking about the good news of Jesus, this is actually what's happening. It doesn't make sense if you don't have this identity aspect. Because what we're saying is that we believe what God has told us, that by faith, by me believing that Jesus lived a perfect life under the law, died a death for sin, and rose again. I believe all that's true. And then I cast my life on him, saying, I have no hope other than that being true. I have no hope other than God's mercy being exercised and the legal demands of my sin being met through Jesus Christ. I have no other hope than that. I believe that, and so I'm going to cast my whole life on him. When I do that, there is something that happens to me and to you, if that's you, where I die because my life, what Paul says, right? I've been crucified with Christ. The death of Jesus actually becomes my death. And therefore, his new resurrection life becomes my life. That is real. Mm-hmm. That's real. And therefore, everything that is at Jesus' disposal, who he is, his power, his wisdom, is now mine. How? By faith. It's given by faith, by that trust. So therefore, I can say, I can do what Jesus has done. Mm-hmm. That's why Paul goes on, in verse 6 here, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God to be grasped. So Jesus Christ, the Son of God, is God. But he didn't want to exploit that position to say, I will do nothing. He didn't count equality with God a thing to be grasped. But that word grasped, another way of just understanding it is like to be taken advantage of. Mm-hmm. So his rights, he didn't say, I'm going to be taking these advantage of these rights to the detriment of others and only to my good.
But he could have.
Yeah. And it had every right to do
right.
that.
Yeah.
Being God from all eternity. And that humility thing, like taking on human flesh. Mm-hmm. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, he had every right to do whatever at that point.
Exactly. Yeah. There's nothing that says God has to save us, except the fact that God said, I will save you. Mm-hmm. He obligated himself.
Okay, I think I need to go to a small break because I've got questions, and maybe you do too, my friend. And my question I'm going to say is this. How come if we have all of this in our hearts and we have Christ, him through in us, why is it that we Christians can be some of the meanest people when we're on Facebook and social media and even in our encounters with other people? My friend, if you've got a question too, we would love to hear from you because this is an important topic. We want to represent Christ. We want to love people, and yet how do you do this? And this is a good conversation. Take advantage of the fact that Pastor Timothy O'Day is here. You are listening to Key Radio. 855-539-4583 is our text line. 855-KEY. glue. You can also post your question on Facebook Live comment section as well. And just search Key Radio and you'll find it there. My friend, this has been a great day. Stay with us.
Key Radio Life Unlocked, Truth Unleashed. Pastor Timothy O'Day with us of Christ Fellowship Church, and we were talking just a little bit ago about the gospel, and we weren't talking about going to church or being religious or whatever it might be that makes you think that you're in the right standing with God. Maybe it's tithing, maybe it's being baptized, whatever it is. We're not talking about that. We're talking about putting your trust in Christ alone for your salvation, because he's done everything. And then he does a work in you. He gives you a new heart, and you begin a new life. And it's not just freshening up the old, but there is some remnants of the old left. But positionally, we are right where we are in a right standing with God positionally. And so it's not about making yourself good enough or anything like that, doing enough more good works than bad. It's no, you're coming with bad and God's making you good.
Yeah.
And then you can live this life that we're talking about. Without that happening, without being born again, you can't possibly do what God's called you to do through the New Testament, to die to self. I mean, that's kind of a ridiculous concept. Being humble, I mean, how difficult is that if you don't have a changed heart? And that's God's work in you.
There is a time, though, I mean, and I'm just going to be real here, that sometimes people say things and I see red. I mean, I'm like, wow, what is going on? And it's really hard practically sometimes for a Christian to regard others, or as it says in 2:4, let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. And when people start saying things about you or saying, I don't know, just infringing on your rights, so to speak, you have a tendency. I mean, American Heather here gets a little bit salty. I mean, she does. And how do we remind ourselves of whose we are versus who we are, right? You know what I'm saying?
No,
help us out there.
Well, I think a big part of that is, where are you looking? I know I've already said this, but I'm going to say it a little bit differently. So I said earlier, where are you looking for your identity? You're looking at Jesus Christ. Now, where are you looking, though, to understand that identity that you have? Because if I'm inundated all the time with things that are telling me that my identity is primarily as an American, I should be primarily concerned about the kingdom of this world instead of the kingdom of God, then what I'm going to end up primarily thinking of myself as an American and concerned about the things of this world and not the things of God. So what are we taking in? So a couple passages that I think are going to be helpful for this. On that first reality of what we're taking. Actually, let me pause, because there's another thing I want to say, and then I'll go to the passages. So that first thing is, what are we taking in? What's hitting us? And then we also just need to remember that we are in this period of already and not yet. That the old nature is gone. But as Paul said in Galatians 2:20, right? The life I now live in the flesh. So he's saying, I still live in the flesh. So you and I, we still live the life that we're living even after we've been redeemed and changed. And that's why we have to live by faith, because it's very easy for me to think I don't have what is necessary to live in the identity of Jesus Christ. I don't have it. I just think I just think about my natural resources. I do my assessment of what I have by looking around. And I do my assessment by looking at my past. I do my assessment by looking at the news. I do my assessment by everything that's in front of me. That's why I have to live by faith. And part of living by faith is taking in that wisdom that is given from God. So those are the two things I want to say. We have this old nature still that's there that we can live in. That's why we need to be hearing from God, having our minds renewed. And that comes by taking in God's wisdom. So let me just read this passage from James chapter 3, which I think will give us some help here. He writes in James chapter 3, starting in verse 13, He who is wise and understanding, who is wise and understanding among you? By his good conduct, let him show his works in the meekness of wisdom. So paraphrase there, if you see somebody living wisely, their conduct is wise, then you can say, that person must be wise. If you see somebody then living like Christ, you can say, they might have some information that I don't have. Verse 14, but if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast and be false to the truth. This is not the wisdom that comes from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder in every vile practice. So you can look around what's going on, and you can figure out what's going on in somebody's heart.
Story. I'm just stuck on the word demonic here. This is really rough language. This is to the heart of the matter here.
Oh, yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
There's wisdom that comes from above, and there's wisdom that comes from below. There's wisdom that God's wisdom says, eat all the fruit in the garden, but don't eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Worldly wisdom comes and says, God's holding out on you. Here's a better way. It's shortcuts. That's what we're dealing with. So that's why it's demonic. For where, I already read that part, verse 17. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere, and a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. What we have to realize is that all the conflicts that we're seeing around us, this conflict that we get into when we are called to lay down our rights, and we probably should get specific about what we're talking about there, like laying down our rights. But the reason we feel a conflict there is because we cherish something so greatly. This is what he's going to go on to say in chapter 4. Why are there fights and quarrels among you? It's because you want and you don't have. So people that are getting upset and fighting over things that they want but they don't have. We need to ask ourselves the question, am I wanting a good thing, but I'm wanting it so much that it's become an idol in my life? Because good things can be idols. So do I want a good thing to where, maybe this will make people angry, I don't know, we'll say. Do I cherish so much my freedom not to wear a mask out in public that when somebody tells me you have to wear a mask, I just flip out and I respond in a very ungodly and ungracious way? Because then you could say, you know what, it's fine to want that freedom, but have you elevated to the position of an idol in your life to where you're going to sin if you don't get it?
I think that's the crux of the matter there too, is the sinning part. Because there's a lot of things that we need to stand firm on. I think about things like abortion issues, right? The sanctity of life. And this is a good pursuit, right? We are called to be ambassador of Christ, and everybody, I should say, who is created is an image bearer, right? And that starts in the womb. But if we sin in protest against it, then we really are no better, right, than the ones who are perpetrating that. And those are the things that we need to really contemplate too, because we can be against something and for something else, but if we're sinning in the middle of it, we're not honoring the Lord. And that's really our primary goal, is to honor the Lord in all that we do.
Yes. Whether we're with the Lord or not, our aim is to please Him.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah. I mean, so this is important to remember. I'm going to say it again because I'll just try and what you said, I'm going to incorporate it and try and sum it up just as you can want something that's really, really good. And that's when we get blinded, because you're saying, I want a good thing. I want a good thing. But if you're willing to disobey God to get that thing, then, or you're willing to disobey God because you're not getting that thing, then really that thing, whatever it is taking the place of God in your life. It is now what is ruling you and controlling you and forming all of your actions. Whatever I have to do to get this, that's what you orient your life around.
And that's, I think, why it's so important that we conform our minds, right? Because we can fall for a lot of things. We could fall into idolatry so easily. I mean, again, I'm raising my hand here, that we need to constantly be reminding ourselves whose we are every step of the way. And I like how you made that correlation with your kids, right? Because we're O'Days, like because we are Xanders. Xanders don't do things like that. Xanders do it this way. And why? It goes beyond just our family. It's because we want Jesus to be controlling our lives, not just that we're running and trying to do the best that we can to please Jesus. We want him to actually control how we think, how we act, how we interact with each other and with other people around us.
Right. Mike, it looked like you were going to say something.
Oh, well, no, I was just going to, there's a change of subject. It was more like, what are these rights that we're laying down and we're talking about here? Is it okay, as an American, we have a right to respond, but as a Christian, we should probably lay down that right in a lot of cases and respond in a more loving fashion. Is that what we're talking about, that sort of thing?
I don't know. I mean, what right do you want to talk about?
Well,
I think he's saying all of them.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, if we're just looking at the typical American rights, where like you're out in the street and somebody says, "Be quiet," and you go, "I'm not going to be quiet. I'm going to make my voice heard." Right? Like, well, I think we're going to need more context to talk about. Like, but my question to that person would be, what's the heart here? What's the real heart behind why you're doing what you're doing? So if it's just once again, we can end up in a fight and actually be on the right side. But are we conducting ourselves in a way that is pleasing to the Lord? That's the question. So if we look back at James chapter 4, why are there fights and quarrels among you? It's because you want and you do not have. So you fight. You desire and you do not obtain, so you murder. So if somebody's telling me to be quiet, I can think of it this way. Am I getting mad because I'm viewing myself as divine and you just told me to be quiet?
Pride.
So, yeah. The greatest, I see what you're doing is you have insulted me. No, but let's say I'm saying we cannot kill unborn children. And somebody, I won't say you, because somebody yells, "You be quiet." Now, if I'm thinking, I cannot be silent on this issue because this is offensive to God. This is an assault on his image bearers. And primarily, this is a sin against God. If my ultimate concern is God, right? And then I say, I will not be quiet. Then I would not look at that and say, like, oh, that person, they just need to lay down their rights and be quiet. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. But it is important. What is the direction of my heart? Why am I offended when somebody tells me to be quiet? What are they asking me to do, right? So I don't think we can just have this blanket statement and say, you know what, all the time you just need to lay down your rights. You just need to be this kind of doormat. Because that's not even what Jesus was doing when we look back at Philippians chapter 2. He was zealous for the glory of God. His aim was to please God. His aim was always to be obedient to the Father. When he showed anger, which he did, right? You think of the time in John chapter 2 when he went into the temple. He didn't just look around and say, "Oh, my Father's house is being abused. You know what? I just need to lay this thing down." No. He, in righteous anger, clears out the temple and says, "You have made this house of prayer into a house of robbery." So, but you can tell from that, what's his ultimate concern? It is for God.
Right.
His ultimate concern is for God and his glory. So we can have this concern. We can be zealous. We can speak up. But really, we're not saying, here's my right. We're saying, here is God's right. Mm-hmm. That's our primary concern. Not my rights, God's rights.
Here's a question. We fight for our rights, right? Like I think about just a ton of stuff like that. But God is God, and we can speak up for God, but do we necessarily have to fight for God's rights, so to speak? Because it just seems to me that we are to be ambassadors, not warriors. Or is that wrong to say?
I guess it depends on what you mean.
Okay. Well, let's just take the example here with the abortion thing, right? And you know how sometimes things get heated and you're on private property and then and fights might break out. Let's say that's a worst case scenario here. We are called to be heralds of the truth.
Right.
Are we necessarily called to be warriors, like actual fighting warriors for God?
I doubt it.
Right.
No, I mean, think of Ephesians chapter 6, where Paul is giving this great reminder on the work he's doing. He's saying we don't wage war against flesh and blood. That's not the real thing going on. There is a spiritual war going on around that is not perceptible to the human eye, which is why we often don't think in terms of that spiritual war. But that's the important one. So what we are doing since we're using this as an example, in this abortion, what's called the abortion debate, what we are doing there is we are engaging in that spiritual battle with our words. And we need to be mindful of that spiritual battle with it. It's not going to be a war that is won on the terms of the enemy. Because the enemy would love us to view this as a purely physical war, that it's about those things. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't try and do policy. That's not to say you shouldn't go out and you shouldn't protest, that you shouldn't, go out and try and, be a physical presence at these places to try and convince. But that's basically what we're doing. We are trying to let the truth of God and the reality of just reality itself break in, because what is entered into people's minds when they are pursuing that travesty is they are thinking of the world in a particular way that isn't real. The lens has been shifted, and they're being told things that aren't true, like this isn't a life, that this isn't going to mean anything, this isn't going to affect you in the long term. So when they hear that, they are believing, right? It's a demonic wisdom of saying, twisting the truth a little bit. Oh, you won't really be damaged. You won't really regret this. Your life is actually dependent on these other things that this is going to take away from you. So this is the most important thing for you now. Part of what we're doing then is we're entering into that spiritual battle by confronting those spiritual lies. Those are spiritual lies that we have to confront. So we are warriors in that sense. We do participate in this war, but it's not war of flesh and blood.
Wow. We have so much more to talk about, and we have no time left.
Yeah. When we talk about changing people's viewpoints on things, often we miss the love part and showing grace, and we come into it with just the wrong approach. And we can win more hearts and to our ideas with love than we can with beating with a stick or whatever it might be. And so I guess that's one thing to consider too. Yeah,
maybe that's just the best way to just end this, is that we're called to love.
Yeah, we are. And that is think about Ephesians 4. This is what Paul is saying, that people are tossed to and fro by these waves. There are all these opinions that hit us, and we're pushed this way and that. So he says what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to speak the truth in love.
Yeah. Wow.
So we are to try and bring people to a place of security through the truth that we speak.
Wow.
Christ Fellowship Church, where are we going?
Christ Fellowship, Utah.org. Check us out or find us on Facebook.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for leading our conversation. You've been
pleasure.
A real blessing. And thank you, my friend, for joining us today.
This has been Mike and Heather in the Morning, a production of Key Radio, located in beautiful Provo, Utah. For more information about the program and the ministries of Key Radio, check out our website, keyradio.org. On behalf of Mike, Heather, and the entire Key Radio staff, have a blessed and glorious day.